So hi, everyone. This is Sophia. I'm the last speaker for today's Highre U Day conference. So thank you so much for staying with this and generally engaging in the future of work conversation. I'm so excited to talk today about why the gig economy will play a crucial role in creating massive change in our society, and then lightly what it means for students and educators, especially in the room, and how to start thinking about career pathing. So originally the title of my talk was going to be Enabling the Gig Economy, but I decided that when I was creating this presentation, that was a little bit one way in saying, how do we empower the gig economy workers? Instead, I wanted to give a broader sense and a broader discussion around the ecosystem, including those who are served by the gig economy. So instead, this is the title of my presentation, The Power of the Gig Economy, and I hope you enjoy. I'm really excited to talk about this subject for a couple of reasons. The first is a little bit personal in that I have worked on the supplier side of two companies in the gig economy space in San Francisco. So formerly at Instacart, which is a grocery delivery service using independent contractors. And there I was building products for the independent contractors, and they are the shoppers and drivers. Now I'm at Gigster, and have been for 2.5 years, where I lead the operations team focused on enabling our independent talent network that Tasha mentioned of software engineers, designers, product managers, and project managers to deliver software applications that matter for enterprise clients. The second reason I'm pretty interested, and I think many of you on the line probably are as well, is because we're already seeing emergent trends in work that lead to these implications that there's a new paradigm shift in society as a whole. So I'm going to go through a few trends first, and then we're going to weave through various pieces of the journey of talking about Gigster as well as kind of how we see careers play out in the gig economy space. So first, a few things in terms of trends. In 2016, economists Alan Krueger and Larry Katz, so from Princeton and Harvard, wrote a paper on alternative forms of work in the United States from 1995 to 2015. And what they found was that based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics measurements, the percentage of workers engaged in alternative work arrangements, so this is very broad. It's defined as temporary help agency workers, on-call workers, contract company workers, and independent contractors and freelancers rose from 10.7% in 2005 to 15.8% in 2015. So while that may not sound like that substantial of a jump, the broader piece of information that they shed light on was that these estimates, around 94% of the net employment growth in the United States from 2005 to 2015 appeared to occur in the alternative work arrangement form. So while that, point percentage number may not sound striking, what is striking in terms of the implication was that most of the growth in the economy in terms of work has been from alternative work arrangements in the last decade. We're seeing now, recently at least, so bring this to last year, 2018, more than 1/3 of US workers were engaged in one particular part of alternative work, which is freelance work. And this is only going to increase as internet platforms are enabling work to be found, especially in the United States, online. This is from a report and research called Freelancing in America 2018. And what we've seen in 4 years was a substantial jump in internet platform as a way to find work. This is from Mary Meeker's Internet Trends report. Many of you may know this, and it's just to show that there's many, many different types of this form of work, and they're all actively increasing, from Uber to Manolo to VipKid, which is a platform that allows anyone to become a teacher. So right now, not only are we seeing the volume of freelancing opportunities increase and therefore people engaging in freelance work in the United States increase, but the earning power is also increasing. I wanted to shed light that more and more freelancing is seen as a potential full-time career option rather than just a gig on the side. In 2014 and through 2018, actually that percentage of freelancers jumped by 11 points. But there are obstacles ahead, and I think the best way to really understand the sentiment of anything is through art. And particularly, cartoons are a very reliable form of reflecting the zeitgeist or the spirit of the times. And in these cartoons I'm going to show, there are clear obstacles ahead in how as a society we're viewing the gig economy is still. So here's the first cartoon. What you'll see here is the elephant says, and the gig economy worker is saying, I lost my steady job at the circus, now I'm part of the gig economy. And it's meant to be quite derogatory. So this is an image of Uber, the elephant being an Uber driver. In this cartoon, it says the independent contractor in the gig economy, and it's a representation of how this person, this independent contractor, is actually chained by exploitation, harassment, discrimination, wage theft. This is another interesting cartoon, which is very, very cheeky, and the human is in fact driving the robot, and the robot is saying, so how are you liking the gig economy? What these three cartoons imply are many different running themes that I want to point out. And I'm going to flip through them again while I'm talking so that you all can get a sense again of what these cartoons are showing. So one theme that I want to call out is that there's an overwhelming sense that society as a whole still associates independent work or contingent work not with value creation for a market, but for cost reduction purposes and exploiting efficiencies or gaps in a market. Namely, in these cartoons, you see, especially this one, how do we pay workers less and less and substitute for full-time engagements? Another theme that's running along these cartoons through this vein is the implication of the very types of work and the types of people that are doing this type of work, this independent contracting type of work, which is a sense of these tasks are menial, simple, anyone can do them. You can drive a car, anyone can wait in line. And this implies that the independent contractor model lends itself only to simple, truly project by project, short-term arrangements. And so I've highlighted here of the big themes in huge red font what I've seen. It's around cost reduction, menial tasks, and low-end workers. And in fact, I was looking online around a gig economy app ecosystem, and you'll see here, it literally says one category is simple tasks, which is a little bit demeaning if you think about it. So the question then is there hope for the gig economy? Is a gig economy here to stay for the long term, or is it just a clever temporary rouse to find ways to save costs, find market efficiencies, potentially exploit people who have situations where they're finding in between jobs and finding work, or they're not able to find another job? And how can there really be a career path as a result? This is where I want to start talking about Gigster. The reason why, I think and hope that there is hope for the gig economy model is through my time at Gigster. So from Gigster's point of view, there is conviction that the surface area of the gig workforce is far from tapped out and constrained to limited, simple tasks that are a race to the bottom for worker prices. I personally feel so confident in this because in the 2.5 years I've been here, we've seen throughout the course of the company over 1,000 software applications delivered for both commercial and enterprise companies using teams of distributed independent software engineers, product and project managers, and designers. So actually what we are delivering and the methodology that we're using is independent workers who are distributed, first of all, from across over 40 countries. The outcome is complex. It is not simply driving from A to B or waiting in line or doing an explicit task, but orchestrating software development in that whole process. And finally, it's multi-party coordination that we are doing at Gigster, which is multiple independent contractors working together in order to deliver this complex outcome. And so no longer does it seem actually this to be only in the realm of gig economy work being cost reduction related, only around menial tasks and for low-end workers. And so in software, we do see a potential to use independent contractors. However, I would argue that then the question shifts, if you believe me, that it is possible to deliver software with a remote workforce that is independent, that is orchestrating these complex tasks and having to do it all together. The question is, why is it a good model then? I think that's the biggest challenge that all our companies in this future of workspace have to answer. Why is it, and do we have conviction? It's not hard to know that things are possible, but why is it that we chose this model, and why is it better for what we're trying to deliver? So at Gigster, I mentioned that we are delivering software applications using freelancers at startup speed and with high business outcomes for our clients. A broader thing, and I want to put these cartoons and graphics because everyone is shouting about digital transformation. Every company right now is terrified of how they can leverage technology in order to create new business lines, in order to make their businesses better, in order to engage their users, in order to shift the mindset. But the reason why I put this is because what we're trying to do is not just build software, but really create an ecosystem and partner with companies around digital transformation. So this is really scary now because the question is, can a contingent workforce really do digital transformation? And is that the best model to do so for these enterprise companies? And my proposition and thesis here is, yes, the gig economy is crucial for digital transformation of large-scale enterprise companies. If they want to see a shift, then this is one of the best models in order to leverage to create more innovation and to create a mindset around technology. First, what is unique about a contingent workforce? On-demand talent pipeline and validated for the right skills. What I mean by that is, at Gigster at least, and this is across the board for many freelance economy companies, our companies are able to on-demand acquire talent in a very streamlined way with our own processes, and then make sure that we have the right skills for the tasks at hand. In traditional established companies, the way this works is that when there's a need for a certain skill, because there's a bench of people on payroll, there's an explicit goal of driving utilization up so that workers are worth the money that the companies have paid for. Often you find that workers are reconfigured without the skills actually needed for the tasks at hand just to fill that utilization quota. And so companies are having a hard time actually providing the true outcomes they want because of this skill mismatch. It is also difficult to train and upskill employees in-house. And while that's a very important endeavor for companies, many do not invest in that upskilling. And also are not able to really understand how to do so. Just as an example on Gigster, so many of our web products that we build use a kind of JavaScript framework for Node as the backend and React as a front end stack. And to let you know, Node was created 10 years ago and React 5 years ago by Facebook. Data scientists as a discipline rose in professional acceptance in the last 10 years. And I give these examples because that's the way in order for us to kind of refresh talent and make sure that these companies can really truly get on top of the trends around technology. The second piece why the gig economy model specifically is crucial for digital transformation, and I keep on emphasizing this, a gig economy versus full-time employment is because there's much more leverage around how to intentionally build teams and factor in working styles and team-based outcomes. This is really, really important because one of the most important features of achieving good outcomes is the people who work on these projects. And so as you can imagine, many of you probably work in situations where you're full-time and there's only a set number of people you're likely working with. So there's lack of transfer of and new upskilling around learning new processes, working with different people who maybe you would get along more with, or you would actually be able to achieve higher outcomes with. And with a flexible model, we are able to, with all gig economy companies, have much more ability and flexibility, mobility around how to find the preferences for clients, how to factor in user behavior in order to create the best outcomes. And in this case, how to create the best team-based outcomes. And finally, a very interesting feature around contingent workforce versus full-time employees is that there is a tendency in order to track, to truly measure performance around a scalable gig economy model, there needs to be some level of continuous performance measurement and feedback loop. And if you really think hard about your HR department in the company, nothing against the HR department, it's more that because everything is face-to-face, there's often a lot of awkwardness in delivering feedback. One thing that is really, really problematic is that feedback is not that real time. So you can have such a long lag between when people are working on projects and finding out that feedback loop. Whereas in this model where you have product and data tracking, there is a better performance feedback loop that can be delivered more in real time to teams in order to deliver the right outcomes. So this is a sample of what a few things that we use at Gigster specifically on projects. We not only use a peer-to-peer feedback rating system that is regular on projects, but also in order to standardize that and make sure that there's another source of truth, we measure concretely deliverable assets in code, design, and scope. I know I mentioned before that, hey, just take my word for it that this is really possible and that there are large orchestrations of people who are performing complex tasks, who are doing also independent contractors together. And I just wanted to end this piece with saying yes. So one thing that we've seen, one example is that concurrently on a Fortune 500 companies, web, iOS, and Android app that we built for them, there were 19 freelancers at a certain point, and this achieved, through this model, we were able to build apps that have a very high App Store rating and 60,000 MAUs organically. So again, going back to just saying, is this really possible? Yes, and hopefully through some of these slides, that there is a lot of specialness and highlights in the gig economy model that make digital transformation and on the side building software even more possible and better. So there's a few learnings that I want to talk about with the gig economy model, and then I know it's Q&A time. There are a few things that are really, really important and stand out. And I know these are soft skills and not technically hard skills, but I think they're important in that independent contract work looks more like entrepreneurship than a full-time job does. One is always constantly looking out for new opportunities and seeing how to negotiate, how to leverage relationships. So the first piece is for those interested in, career development services and educators, communication is highly important. And what we see is client negotiation or negotiation skills are extremely important, not just, again, with clients, but with teams as well. And this is something a lot of schools just do not emphasize. Also, because of the spread of the gig economy, you now have more and more diverse individuals who you may never meet if you're working on some of these platforms. And so communication is really key because there's many different diverse individuals. And in at least the Gigster context, there's teamwork required. The gig economy also means that there will need to be continuous learning. So it's a lifelong student mentality of how do I upskill? How do I learn and stay on top of new trends? Because that's the way to get further work and to get further projects. And finally, something again that I feel is not really emphasized at all in schools is that with this shift in how work is being done, reputation is going to be a little bit different. Our chief sales officer loves this quote, always be selling. And in this model, one is always selling. One is one's own entrepreneur and one's own company. And so reputation online and offline in many different interactions that one may not think about is really important. I was talking a while ago, is there hope for the gig economy? I hope to leave an impression that there is, and that it's here to stay. So this last slide is around the industrial revolutions. So first and second industrial revolutions were moving work from the farm to the factory. The third, arguably, which we had been in for a very long time, was from the factory to the office setting. And now the World Economic Forum also has this idea that we are in a fourth industrial revolution of work. And so what we're seeing more and more is that there will be a shift from the workspace and office in one job to probably many jobs, many different projects, and employees and projects coming to workers instead. Your question is asking whether right now it is feasible for students to enter the gig economy workforce. And to be honest, right now the state of it right now is harder. I think for certain careers or certain roles, it is easier. So for designers, there's always been a project portfolio-based view of one's work and how one views in the standards, the market standards, a designer. So I think that's a little bit closer. But in more traditional forms of work, such as software engineers and product managers, there is a level of experience needed. I would argue it's not just the technical skill. It's not just, hey, having 1 or 2 years of product management experience. It is going back more to those soft skills that I mentioned, and it sounds like a lot of speakers have mentioned. It really is around, can you communicate? Because communicating, even in a company, is so much different than communicating with a client. It's a whole nother level. And as a former product manager, I don't even know if I would feel, onboarded to really understand that. So I think there's things on the side and soft skills that you just learn from being in a work setting, even if they don't 100% translate, but they're much better than jumping in. However, I do think, again, it depends on the role.